Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us with the rain from on high. That is the blessings that flow. Well, I want you to be a part of another special edition of our monthly Mental Health Matters. Hey, I'm reminded to tell you to go online, see us on YouTube, Facebook, and where's that other place, Susan? Call Susan, she'll tell you where to find us. Because in our studio, we got 3 fantastic people. Well, 2 and then 2 others. We'll tell you which 2. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much for allowing me what I think is a distinct pleasure and privilege to sit, facilitate, to live, love, and to laugh. And as I learn, I think to whom much is given, much is required. So we share our knowledge. To our guests, a special welcome to each one, and especially to Dr. Alexandra Borden. Welcome, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah. Glad to be back in the studio, too.
Well, you may have been physically absent, but for our guests, I don't kiss and tell often, but you've been behind the scenes ever diligently ensuring that the show goes on and that we have. So thank you very much. I'm encouraged, not just by your energy and enthusiasm and intellect, but the diligence and the dedication, dogged determination that she brings to make sure that things get done to the highest standard. So thank you, always raising the bar.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having us on here each month. You know, I think these are all such important topics, and especially today. This is a big one.
And it's interesting. I don't say this lightly. I know it offends many. I honestly do not. Especially now that I'm no longer, 13. I won't say how old I am, but it's not 13. I think I ever want to be 13 again. Maybe I wasn't ever 13. But television in whatever format, I don't like it. I prefer a book. I can control how fast I read, whether I pause it, and people say, well, there's DVR, you can do that. But it's not the same thing. Your eyes and your mind don't work the same. But increasingly, on the screen, we're hearing more about mental health and wellness, and I'm hoping that it's encouraging a dialogue for people to be responsible, receptive, and to engage and love people in a way to appreciate that, just like our spiritual health, financial health, that where we are mentally, and that may not even be the right way to say it, is important. So to having that discussion globally, and to you, Dr. Borden, and through you, I think this program for the last, 15 years or thereabouts, it feels like
20, 30.
Yeah. has helped me personally, but not just in that vein, in speaking with and to people who seek out and say, listen, you had a segment 3 months ago, or some would even remember years ago, that it helped them to appreciate, I can talk to somebody. There's no shame in it. In fact, actually, it's important. Just like you would asking your coach, hey, how do I improve my, this? How do I improve that? If we don't ask, we don't seek, we don't understand there's a resource. So as we talk about, the idea of mental health and how it affects us, I'm excited about this discussion. So to you?
Yeah, no, me too. I think that this is a really important one. It's one that I obviously deal with a lot. We've got two great organizations represented here, with Mr. Brent from the Hope for Today Foundation, which deals primarily with persons with substance use concerns. And so they're offering transitional housing as they're returning back into the community. And Nurse Nipna here from Loud Silent Voices, who has the mental health group home as well. And so that also helps people coming back from treatment, whether a lot of times from overseas, transitioning into independent living or a supported living here. And so I think that this is a part of recovery that a lot of times people are not as aware of until it happens. Yeah. Obviously, as a mental health professional, it's a part that I deal with often. And I think it's important for the community to know that these resources are here. And there's people here that can help in those situations. I think it's so scary when a family member gets hospitalized or has a mental health crisis or has a substance abuse issue, and a lot of times we don't know what to do or where to go. A lot of times we do have to seek overseas treatment, and what do we do when they come home? And so there's a lot of questions and concerns, especially because they often have to go overseas for these services right now. Yeah. So I think it's really great for us to talk about this part that is such a key factor in many persons' recovery coming home. And of course, I think we've distinguished between kind of primary substance use or mental health concerns, which of course are all in the same bag at this stage. And more we're understanding that they're very closely tied, just like physical and mental health.
And it's something that I keep telling people, I've heard a saying long ago. If I paid attention, I even might even remember who the quote is attributed to, the notion that a little learning, not a little knowledge, a little learning is a dangerous thing. And through deliberate reading, through perhaps, in a sense, I see it as a blessing in disguise. There's the one-eye monster on the screen. You walk by and there's a comment being made, and you stop and you pay attention. And we've seen, there's a film, the family is all concerned about the way that family member is responding to a situation. They get scared. They dial 911, the police come, and they're trying to contain the situation. But in the absence of a coordinated effort of proper training, do you taser the guy to get him down? Does a doctor come in and, the whole scenery, put him in a straight jacket and inject him and throw him in a room? The way film way back when. So, Mr. Dipna, from that perspective, a community's response to a vulnerable, a community's sense of being equipped, qualified, and being called to help, not only to de-escalate the situation, not only to assist the family and being able to say, okay, there's a crisis now, your loved one is obviously going through something, but we're going to respond that helps. Sometimes in the absence of knowledge, maybe we fall back to that thing we know, that tried and true, but not necessarily the best. How do we get to that space?
Well, I think we're actually on the road to that space. I think we're on the road to that place, that destination. And I think that things have improved dramatically over the years in Cayman in terms of, families, individuals, carers and professionals being educated, because, of course, there's been a small cadre of us that have worked in psychiatry, right? Who've been out in the field, in the ditches, right? Digging away in the trenches, trying to help people, try to educate. But we've been a very small team. But, with the increase in services and the awareness of mental health, I think that things have changed a lot. But I would say that the biggest change has been that now in the training of, say, RCIPS officers and other designations, this is something that is incorporated into the training. Now, it may not be enough, right, and it may not be long enough, but it is helping, and I'm a part of that both as a community psychiatric nurse and also through my role on the Mental Health Commission. And you talk about situations unfolding and how sometimes they can become very volatile and explosive out of nowhere. And I, over the course of my years working as a community psychiatric nurse, both here and in England and London, I've been involved in many situations that were definitely quite frightening to someone who wasn't aware of what was going on, who didn't know what was happening, who didn't understand. And there's a lot of stigma attached, but because things have changed so much, because people are more educated, and because they're less quick to react and quicker to act in a more caring and empathetic manner. So as an example of that, a few weeks ago I was out on my visits seeing someone who is not particularly well at the minute, not unwell enough to be necessarily admitted to hospital, but defaulting in treatment, defaulting in medication. And you know, we have had so many improvements in medication over the years that we now have sometimes long-acting injectables that can be administered once a month, once every 3 months, and now even every 6 months. But this was an individual who wasn't particularly well, who's using some illicit drugs as well into the bargain, limited insights. Now, very trusting of me, but didn't believe anything that I was saying. You know, he had his human rights, he could do whatever. He ended up calling the police, actually.
On you?
Not necessarily on me, but to clarify the situation. So I said, where are you calling? Are you calling the nearest, police station that's in the district? No, he was calling 911. Well, I said, that's an emergency service. Is that relevant? Anyway, I couldn't stop him doing it. He did it. And the point of all of this is that the police arrived. And they were so good. They quickly assessed the situation. They could see that I was not in any way feeling threatened, or his family member. This is in a fairly isolated area. They gave him time to speak. And they supported him. That even though he was getting a little bit agitated and excitable, they stayed with him. They let him speak. They tried to find a solution. And they were also very good in that they worked in a team, that one took the lead and established a relationship, and the other stood back and just ensured that everything was safe and well. And they were very kind to me and let me speak as well. But to cut a long story short, this went on for about an hour and a half. And the reality was because of their intervention, because of my intervention, and because of patience and a little time, we were able to resolve a situation that could have become very difficult. Now, if that had have happened anywhere else, maybe in the world, it might have been a very different situation. So I think we've achieved a lot, and we have a lot further to go.
Well, when we come out from the break, Brent, I'll bring it into the discussion because, as Nurse Lipton was sharing, I'm thinking not only the individual that may have a substance abuse issue, but what about your family member, friend, co-worker who may have about a dementia? And the way they respond, they get aggressive and different things. I think knowing the community, like we in business say, know your customer, having all of us on board, all the different agencies, understanding the situation, knowing your community, knowing your people, knowing how to. The training comes in, but it helps. I think that is gradually taking place where we know, we're not in others' business, but we know what is happening. So with that, Brent, when we come back, we're talking about transitional housing and the idea of potentially how are we as community members assisting, how are we ensuring that integration is there, how are we facilitating through the justice system, whether courts, prison, otherwise, to make sure that this person has, whether that's the second chance or that's the countless chances, that they keep getting the opportunity because they've been supported. Let's talk about it when we come back.
Absolutely.
All right. Join us after the break. Hey, you haven't had your coffee yet? Well, there's some brewing. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
The Cayman Pharmacy Group provides you with more than just prescriptions. We strive to make your health our concern. We recognize the complexities of pharmaceuticals and the need to personalize your care. That is why we offer personalized one-on-one counseling. Our pharmacists are here to assist you with questions you may have about your health and the medications you've been prescribed. With West Bay Pharmacy and CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy, the Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. We care about your health.
Ladies and gentlemen, after a 3-year hiatus, Junior Badabanu is back.
Look where we reach again.
That's right, the streets of Georgetown will come alive on Saturday, April 22nd, when Junior Badabanu will present colorful costumes with this year's theme, a hearing drums.
Look where we reach again.
The Family Fun Day will start at 2 p.m. with food, face painting, and much more. It's going to be a whole heap of fun for the entire family. Junior Badabanu Street Parade begins at 4 p.m. on Saturday from the lawns of the Glass House. Winds through the street of Georgetown and returns to the Glass House for the big finale and awards for the best Junior Badabanu bands. Come celebrate the juniors' unforgettable memories this Saturday at Junior Badabanu Street Parade. Sponsored by Cayman National, Saxon, Cayman Airways, Pepsi, RBC, the Department of Tourism, and Radio Cayman.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Kim and Brack and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Attention all runners and walkers. It's time to lace up your shoes and join us for our annual Deputy Governor's 5K Challenge Run Walk event. Whether you are a seasoned runner or just looking for a fun way to get some exercise, this event is for you. Join us on April 30th in Grand Cayman. Do something good for your body and have some fun while supporting our local community. Proceeds benefit Loud Silent Voices, the Cayman Islands Red Cross, and the United Against Bullying Foundation. The DG's 5K could not happen without support from our platinum sponsor, Appleby, and gold sponsors, Butterfield, Credit Union, DART, Davenport Development, EY, and our halfway point sponsor, Cynical. $25 for adults and $10 for kids 17 and under. Register at www.racecaribbean.net. Don't miss out on this opportunity to have fun, get fit, and support our community. See you at the start line.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to Dr. Alexandra Borden on course Cayman for helping us, every month facilitate a monthly mental health matters show. This one we're talking about, transitional housing and recovery from Loud Silent Voices with one of the many hats. Our Stipner joins us together with Brent Hides from Hope for Today Foundation. Brent, as we were going into the discussion, two things. I was asking what we talk about, but as we get into it, at some point, share with us, about hope, and certainly with Loud Silent Voices. I think Miss Jackie is phenomenal in her efforts. It's just amazing what we can do with the passion. But I was sharing a few things during the break about how we maybe perceive certain things, perhaps how we present ourselves, how we position it, how we respond to try to help, people. But help us, Brent, because I think you have the other kind.
Yeah, Brent Hayes from Hope for Today Foundation. Hope Foundation is open to assist residents of the Cayman Islands doors that are struggling with substance abuse issues. We will also, on many occasions, work with the mental health court. We partner together to try to provide the best treatment for someone struggling with mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in the Cayman Islands, we know that we have many people that are dual diagnosed. They not only suffer with some mental health, but they have also added drugs to the mix, which makes it sometimes a double problem. But when we look at transnational housing, without places like the Hope Foundation, Loud Silent Voices, that provides these programs, you have to wonder sometimes where these individuals would be. The Hope Foundation and Loud Silent Voices recognize the fact that there are individuals in this community that are struggling with mental health issues, and these people still need assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Hope Foundation will work with, like I said, we work with the mental health court at a different level of mental health. These people are usually contacted by Ms. Dipna and the mental health courts or the probation office, and we reach out to Hope for Today Foundation how we can best help. And sometimes we have to understand that these individuals that need assistance. And when someone needs assistance, what we do? Well, we get them proper diagnosed, we get them stabilized, and then we welcome into the program. We do an assessment and intake with the individuals, and we open the door to try to help.
Let me ask of you,
Sure.
right? In looking at the Cayman context, and I don't think this is necessarily naive. I believe many things are solvable, but you got to first acknowledge it in order to address it. And in the Cayman context, just statistically, let's say there's 100,000 people. that's a good football stadium. There are universities that have it. So
that was a piece I was going to touch on.
Yeah.
And today in Cayman, I recognize the fact that we don't no longer have to be ashamed because a family member may be struggling with substance abuse issues. I mean, like right next to where we grew up, right? There's two individuals that struggle with substance with mental health issues, and what they spent all their time just locked away in the home.
Yeah. But is it two? Is it 202? Is it 202?
It's definitely two that grew up.
I appreciate that.
And instead of the family at an early age seeking some sort of treatment to actually have the individual address their issues, they were just locked away in the home.
Yeah, but let me ask that casualness that we have in our society, as an example. We need something from a government agency, and we know somebody who knows somebody, or we may know the person we call. Hey, I'm wondering how to find out this. That helps to facilitate. Now, that may be the scene that we could call a police officer about something, maybe a physician, not to go around legislation, not to do anything that would be improper, but just that. So with that casualness, what about the formal approach, let's say through Hope, to document, to ensure that there are certain procedures, just in case someone comes along and go, okay, I need to know what happened here with this thing.
And then I don't know if there's a law in place that where we can force the parent.
But it's not so much about forcing. Dr. Borden?
Well, so, I mean, it's kind of it gets tricky because you have to kind of weigh out the rights of the person, right, or the person with that's going through the crisis versus the safety of the community. And so that's where the mental health law came in, I believe in 2013, which gave us a structure to try to offer that. I mean, if the child needs services and doesn't receive it, you might be venturing into neglect at that stage. So that may be more of like a medical neglect. With adults, when they go into crisis, whether it's substance use or some kind of mental health crisis, be it mania, severe depression, psychosis, substance use, that's something that the police and then the doctor will then have to weigh out, is if this person, if they're not wanting treatment, at what stage can you forcibly give treatment, which is when they're a danger to themselves or to others, right? So if someone is actively manic, they're not able to look after themselves. If someone is experiencing a psychotic episode, then they're not responding to reality. Sometimes they might become suicidal, homicidal. There's different things that can come up depending on what's happening for them. And that's then up to the doctor to decide. But Cayman does have mechanisms that the family is interested in getting treatment and the person is not. They're lacking insight, like Nurse Dempner was talking about. They're not understanding that they're not well. And there are now procedures as well where the family can get them assessed at their request.
I can also remember way back then, because up till Dwayne can help me out here, up till about 29 to 30 years old, this individual was functioning like a normal human being. You know, he would work in the family business. He would help out in every way he possibly could. When this individual started to drop off, we all got concerned because he was also a real good footballer at that time. So we knew him real well, but he started to drop off, and all of a sudden there was all these little things, these little comments that his friends would make. Oh, he need this, he need that, and if he had this, he'll get better, and all this kind of stuff. And like we didn't look at mental health. Not even myself looked at mental health for what it was. You know.
So is that the challenge then, that in a small community, in a small population, no matter what that is, if you're a classroom with only a few students, you should be able, you know, the expectation is you should be able to, right? But in our community of, again, let's say 100,000, it's not quite that maybe, relative to a community of 1 million or 10 million, we should be able to, everybody says. But if there's an unwillingness, there's the lack of will, whether societal, political, economic, to acknowledge, to address. But if the stigma, the potential, it could be attached, the family member who, because of something, has dementia, there's nothing to be ashamed of. But we probably are, because they're aggressive or because they may wander off and all these things. How do we get, now you've seen it,
Yeah, well, I think that there is, going back to resources again, and there's so much more community resources. There's so much things that is grown from the ground up, right? Grassroots organisations. So we're looking about dementia particularly. We've got a DASI, right? Which, is a voluntary organisation that, is there free to anyone. Now, if you're a little bit uncomfortable about reaching out to a doctor, a nurse, a therapist, a social worker, but of somebody who's in a DASI, there's a number you can call. You can ring them up and say, look, I'm a bit concerned. I'm not sure. What do you think I should do? And I know that they've had interactions like that on many occasions. They're then able to, to assist them and direct them in the best way in which they should go. Right. That would be one way. So I think our resources are getting better.
But then what about, again, we look at our community, and whether it's, Miss Jackie with Loud Silent Voices, Miss Dorothy with, a DASI, the notion that some would share that in a community like this, we should not be having some of the needs relative to housing, homelessness, hunger. Just as an example, if we leverage the resources, if we pool together and understand, I liken that to our small community. Maybe 30 years ago, there might have been one person, running around town or the district. Now there may be 100, and are we willing to look at that person and say, oh, that's that person's fault because of bad choices or whichever? But there, by the grace of God, go I.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, but it's from where I'm sitting doing. I mean, we look at the resources and what we have today as far as Love Southern Voices, the Hope for Today Foundation, the Bridge Foundation. Nobody wanted to take that on.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to take up the challenge of establishing a halfway house. Nobody thought it would work.
And that was it. It was having the guts to do it.
They never thought it would work. And I tell you what happens after we all get it going, there's a whole bunch of people that are willing to come in and tell us, this is what you need to do.
Yeah. Let's explore when we come back. I know we're going to take a break, Dr. Borden. Okay. All right, join us after. Maybe it's the lack of courage. Maybe. Maybe something else. Want to know what that is? After the break.
Here at Savannah Pharmacy, our pharmacists do a lot more than just count out your pills and fill prescriptions. They undergo extensive education in the study of how the human body uses and responds to medicine. They have also built up years of experience in real-life counseling on how to take medication safely. Our pharmacists are on the front lines in keeping our society healthy. Don't risk it or hesitate. Contact us or schedule a consultation with one of our pharmacists today. At Savannah Pharmacy, we care about your health.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Wednesday, April 26th is World Intellectual Property Day. It's a time to celebrate our creative minds, from musicians, songwriters, and authors to inventors, designers, painters, and so much more. Did you know that their creations, just like yours, can be protected by a patent, trademark, or copyright? Find out how to register and protect your intellectual property today. Visit the Cayman Islands Intellectual Property Office website at ciipo.ky for more information. That's ciipo.ky. It's your innovation, your creation, and your intellectual property. Protect it today.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Dr. Alexandra Borden and Nurse Dipna Carton and Mr. Brent Hydes, Nurse Dipna from Loud Southern Voices, Brent from Hope for Today Foundation. As we talk about transitional housing, and I'm deliberately consciously asking us to think, talk, and perhaps through our discussion, ask others to ask ourselves and ask each other and demand that we step up to the plate, bring our time, our talent, our treasure, as Ms. Conley always reminds us, that without that contribution, where would our society be? So, Brent, as we're going into the break, you were sharing certain things, right?
I've always believed that whether you're living, a life of luxury or whether you've been down in the hole, I think there's no story that should not be told. I think as individuals, we all have a story, and we need to share it. When we share it, we help many. So I look at the lifestyle that I've lived up to 15 years ago. And, I could sit down and keep my mouth shut, and I could just back off and say, I'm happy with the way things were and the way things are, but I were not. I were not. So what I personally decided to do was to take it upon myself and to make it a personal mission that I was hurting for many years, caught up in the grips of addiction. Addiction has robbed me of everything that was good. And I thought as an individual, I have a story and I need to talk about it and I need to share it. And I need to get involved in the process of recovery. And by doing that, not only did I help many, but I was able to help myself so much. And that's where I see it. I see as individuals, we give ourselves while helping others, we're benefiting ourselves so much.
Yeah. But not in your case, but just generally since you shared that. I agree that we should share a story. I agree that, through our own lifestyle, our examples, our experiences, others can learn, right? But I liken it to what I believe Winston Churchill said, history shall be kind to me, for I shall read it myself, words to that effect. So in that story that we share, how much of that narrative that we're crafting so that we only share the good things, we sanitize the rest, we present it in such a way, sugarcoat it, but we also make us look good instead of the what was it in the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad and Ugly, right? Is it that we're honest enough in who we are and what we're saying? I commend you, Brent, when you come on here, you talk directly, and it may be because we're chatting, we know some of our past and our experiences, but through that we may encourage others. And in the Cayman context, Dr. Borden,
I like to think that we're all just sick people trying to get well.
Well, aren't we all?
We all have our own journey and our own difficulties and our own goals and passions.
That's why I like to think that we're all just sick people trying to get well, trying to stay well.
I mean, exactly. Really what we're looking at is a cultural shift, right? And so ideally people could come home from recovery, families welcome them with open arms, bring them back in, the family's functioning in a healthy way and they're able to get a job. But unfortunately, that's not always how it works. It's very difficult having a family member going through a major mental health crisis, going through substance use addiction, substance use disorder. A lot of times there's a lot of hurt, a lot of pain there. A lot of times the family system itself has difficulties that need to be addressed. And you can't just have one person go away, get put into recovery, they're sober for 30 days, 2 months, they come home, get plopped right back into the same system, nothing has changed. So there's a lot of different factors and variables that have to be taken into consideration. But that's where the transitional housing and the halfway houses are so helpful to give them somewhere to stay, a safe place to continue their treatment, to make sure they make it to appointments. I know Mr. Brent is great about wherever the appointments are, whether it's mental health, counseling center, wherever they need to be, if it's an AA meeting, NA, to make sure that they get there. To have that support and allow them the chance to rebuild the relationships as well. I agree, though, that hearing it is helpful. Obviously, I teach as well, so I obviously have the practice. I do a lot of therapy and work there, but I also teach. And that's where I feel like a lot of the cultural shifts are coming from, is the future generations and people becoming better versed, having a better understanding of mental health and substance abuse and what happens and how do we help. and breaking some of the stigma, because it is going to take us helping other people to get through it. And I will say that, you know, my students all come to my classes, they take their exams, they get A's, they write brilliant papers, but I think for all of them, the pivotal moments normally actually are a visit to the Hope Foundation with Mr. Brent and whichever residents are there, and to hear the not so nice side of addiction and and the reality of it. You know, some of us grow up heavily exposed to it and understanding of it. Many of us don't. You know, so it gives them a chance to see it, but then also to see recovery. And I think that that's the cool part about being a mental health professional and being on this side, is that I've had the opportunity to see that therapy works. I've had the opportunity to see that medications work and that recovery does happen. You know, and it might take a couple of tries, but that's okay. And I think it's having the country and the culture begin to embrace that and not be so stigmatized, being willing to lend a helping hand. You know, there's places like Beacon Farms giving, you know, the guys an opportunity to work, to learn the skills, especially if you start using drugs from early on, especially if you get caught in the legal system. These guys go to jail, 17, 18. They've never been a grown-up. They're not a man. They're going to jail as a child, and they're coming out looking like a man, but without any of that experience. You know, and they've got a criminal record. You have nowhere to go. Don't have any money. There's not a lot of...
Constantly judged.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, like I say all the time, right? I mean, many people are talking about saying, go and recover, go and do something with yourself. But they're coming out of jail, nowhere to stay, no food to eat. None of these things, none of the basic things that a human being needs. And you're saying go and recover.
And as Dr. Bond says, they go right back into the situation.
And same thing with mental health, if they go into treatment from early on or experience.
And then another thing you have to understand is between the mental health court and the counseling center and all these entities, there's not one person that makes the decision about how and what treatment is going to look like.
But Dr. One?
I just think that, you know, Brent was talking way before the break about, you know, when you decided, when it was recognised that this was seriously needed in the community, the transitional home for people in recovery, and why had it never happened before. And if I look at LSV and Loud Silent Voices and Miss Jackie Neals' purpose and what she has done, if I'm absolutely honest, I'm ashamed. I'm personally ashamed that I had worked here for 10 years before that, and I'm in the know and I see it, and I didn't do anything. Right? I was doing my best as a clinician, but I didn't do enough to stand up and say, we can do this. And so Jackie took the bull by the horns. She had the impetus to do it, and it took... But so what is it that stops us from doing it?
She had the courage.
She had the courage, and she wasn't frightened of the possibility of failure. And for many of us, and you talked about it earlier as well, sometimes it's that possibility of failure that stops us progression, that stops us moving ahead, that stops us finding
I can tell you, when we first sat down and Mr. Levinsky and I and a couple of the board members decided to put Hope Foundation together, I can tell you the words that was coming out of people's mouth was, it won't last a month, it won't last 2 months. And you know, look, time has passed and it's been a struggle.
But let me ask a question. I mean, whether it's Hope, whether it's LSV, whether it's something else, in this community for some reason we seem to be willing to find all the faults, to put these impediments, and even in our personal lives. So let's say, if you'd forgive me, just as an analogy, you find a friend, there is a mutual connection, but you see all the potential things that could go wrong with this new relationship, whether it's a business partnership, whether this could lead to marriage, whatever it is, what if? And we're willing to look at those negatives, not as a way to counter them, but as a way to be impediments to preclude us from even trying. So in the Cayman context, or whether it's you 10 years ago, or whether it's 50 years ago when we would send off people in our community for truancy. They never went to school, so ship them off to a reform school in Jamaica, or we send them off to the madhouse. Those are the negative, hurtful, very derogatory terminology that we applied so easily then. But to what extent has our mindset, even though our language has changed, has our mindset changed? Dr. Watton?
I've always understood from where I'm sitting, Dean, that the process of recovery is it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that we adopt, and not because we're 10 years clean, 12 years clean, 1 year clean, that we stop doing the things that has got us clean and has kept us clean in the first place.
Yeah.
We must continue on the process.
I'll pick up on that. Dr. Borden.
Because I think that there's, when it's mental illness, there's a lot of fear and a lot of lack of understanding, and it is. I mean, I meet many even counselors and therapists, that even some psychologists that maybe haven't dealt with major mental illness, and it is different and hard to understand. And substance abuse comes with a lot of judgment, right? That people blame the person for it, and that's and so does the legal system. Right? They don't put you in treatment, they put you in jail.
Yeah.
And so that's a leap that the U.S. is making now, is trying to use diversion programs. So Mr. Brent does work with like the drug court program. We're talking with the break about the mental health court, trying to keep people out of prison and get them into treatment instead. So I think we kind of have had this belief that someone's using drugs because they're not strong enough or they don't want to stop. And there's a lot of it's a personal failure and a moral failure. And the legal system reinforced that. Right? And so I think that that's a shift that we've seen in the States, and hopefully one that we can see here as well, is to understand what's behind it. You know, a lot of the shows we talk about understanding, even like domestic violence, why does a woman stay? Right. There's a lot wrong with that, yes. You know, but understanding what's actually going on behind it, right? And that's what we try to do in class, and that's what we try to do with these kinds of discussions, and to help people understand what's behind it. It's what you see is just one tiny piece of what's going on, and a lot of times that's what the person becomes known for and judged for, right? You do something that scares them, you do something they don't understand, you do something to hurt them, and that's what they remember. They don't understand what's going on behind it. So it really is about, about understanding what is mental illness, what is depression, what is anxiety, what is psychosis, and what can I do to help? Because there are so many resources here, but in the heat of a crisis, it's hard to know, like, which organization do I call? What number do I call?
I get calls all the time. What do you do?
Right.
How do I get in?
So let's figure out, what do we do and how do we do that? We're going to the news, I'm told. We're going to take our callers if you wish to weigh in. If you want, as some have shared, a couple of questions off air. We're happy to pose them as well. It's part of a discussion, and through dialogue, we might actually come to something meaningful. Join us after the break.
You are listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The headline news is brought to you by Health Services Authority.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Department of Education Services telephone landlines are currently down. The service provider is aware of the problem and is working to resolve the issue. To contact the DES, email bryna.mclaughlin@gov.ky and copy della.ebanks@gov.ky. In international news, doctors treating a teenage boy who was shot twice after ringing the wrong doorbell in Missouri say they have no idea how he survived. Ralph Yarl, 16 years old, was shot in the head and in the arm after he went to pick up his younger brothers on Thursday night. Andrew Lester, an 84-year-old man, has been charged with first-degree assault and armed criminal action. A prosecutor said there was a racial component to the shooting. Mr. Lester has not been charged with a hate crime, and charging documents do not describe the alleged racial bias. Police in Latin America have seized cocaine and other drugs worth $5 billion in an operation lasting 3 weeks and spanning 15 countries. They also seized more than 8,000 illicit firearms and carried out almost 15,000 arrests. Police forces from Mexico in the north to Argentina in the south exchanged information in the operation, which was coordinated by Interpol. Interpol said the arrests had disrupted the workings of several powerful gangs. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
The headline news are brought to you by Health Services Authority.
When you have a sports or fitness-related injury, trust the expertise of the HSA's Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic to get you back in the game. Our internationally trained and certified physicians specialize in sports traumatology, sports medicine, pain management, and orthopedic surgery. For treatment of common injuries such as tendonitis, arthritis, tennis elbow, rotator cuff, or knee tears, schedule a consultation with the Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic, Smith Road Medical Center by calling 949-8600 or visit hsa.ky for more information.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands. Hinton Roxroy Connolly was born in Creek, Cayman on 9th of September 1937. Fondly known as Big H to his family and friends, both a sailor and electrical technician with 5 years at sea and 29 years with cable and wireless, in January 1960, Big H married Cicely Dilbert of Creek, Cayman and had 5 sons. In October 1976, he was united in his second marriage to Francine Porter of Spot Bay, Cayman and they had 1 daughter. Big H was a part of the band Eddie and the Beach Boys, and in August 1977 traveled to New York, where he recorded and published his album A Quick Drink by the Pool Bar. Big H could always be found at the Hilton, his backyard kitchen, which he built in the late 80s to house in yams and cassava he cultivated on the bluff, later converting it into an outdoor kitchen which was named the Las Vegas Hilton. Big H spent the majority of his time at the Hilton, and you would find him playing his guitar and singing his heart out while sipping on his 345 beers. He was known for having many cook-ups with his famous beef and pork. On the evening of Wednesday, 18th September 2019, 9 days after celebrating his 82nd birthday, Hinton passed away peacefully at the Health City Hospital in East End, Grand Cayman. He was the proud father of 6 children, along with 17 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren. Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to Dr. Alexandra Borden for helping us to regularly facilitate our monthly mental health matters show, talking about transitional housing and recovery from loud, silent voices. Nurse Stephen Garten, together with Brent Hayes from Hope for Today Foundation. And I'm hoping that as a community, we start to appreciate that if we draw together, I know when I say this to the people I think are close to me, they might say, boy, you know, that's a bit naive. It's a noble endeavor, but it's naive. I want us to believe that we should endeavor to preserve, if we do, a society that is safe and nurturing, is kind, is loving, one that is secure politically, social, economically, and the like. But when, Brent, we see people in our community that maybe euphemistically we say in a nice, kind way, they're wayward. We make excuses for our inaction because of their behaviors. If we don't help them,
it's easier for us to come up with some sort of excuse, right, rather than take responsibility to what we could have done, should have done, but just didn't do. So we look at Mr. Dipton and I, we work fairly close together. I worked with people that couldn't even put 24 hours of sobriety together. And they have come to Hope. And over time, you know, some of the residents at Hope now is celebrating 6 months, 7 months, 9 months, and they're feeling really, really good about themselves. You look at them, how they've got clean and started to actually rebuild relationships with family, and some of them have children. They're able to connect with ex-girlfriends and wives. So the relationship is starting to rebuild, and they're now starting to feel better about being sober, about being clean.
So let me ask, and I think I have this correct, but just make sure, because there's nothing worse than laboring in ignorance, right? Friends of mine who, whether it's 5 months or it's close to 50 years, they'll say they're still an addict. They're in recovery. And they work the program and they go to the meetings, and for them, it isn't that they were an addict. They're still describe themselves as an addict. Two questions, Brent. First, is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
You see, what I've always heard and what I've always applied to when it comes to myself, see, for some reason I can get a life, a really, really good life, and enjoy life, and all of a sudden come up with this big case of amnesia, where I kind of forget what my life was like, and think that I can go out and probably try a beer or two.
Yeah.
If I make the mistake to go in a bar, decide I want to drink 2 or 3 beers, I'm setting myself up, because the bottom line is, it's not the beer I'm looking for, and I know it's not the beer I'm looking for. I'm only using the beer as a gateway to get to where I really want to be, and that's that crack pipe. And I got to remember that. And as long as I remember that, that's who I am.
Yeah. So that self-definition. Before we take the call, Dr. Borden?
Yeah, it's, so there's two different schools of thought. So the illness model, like what Mr. Brent is describing, is what's commonly used with AA and NA. And many of the people I've worked with will use that model as well. There are other approaches that see it differently. The AA and NA also heavily involve God and spirituality as well. So there's other models as well that are more secular, and there are some people who see substance use just as a behavior that can be changed just like anything else. So there are different schools of thought, and that's where in recovery it's really important that you find a team that understands you and what works for you. And like I've worked with many people who find AA and NA, that is kind of their lifeline, and that is what keeps them sober and keeps them clean. And other people it didn't work for, you know, so everyone has to figure out what works for them, whether it's substance abuse recovery, whether it's mental health, to find people who understand you, your values, your approach to things, and figure out what works for you as an individual. So that is a very popular school of thought, but there are other approaches to it as well. Even things like it tends to be an abstinence model where you have to be absolutely clean of all substances. There's some models that are more harm reduction, where rather than not drinking at all, maybe you can have just 1 drink a week, depending on what it is. Many will still work towards abstinence anyway. Maybe it would just be kind of cutting down and then stopping. But there's different approaches depending on the professional you're working with and what works for you.
Okay. Let's take a couple of our callers.
Sure.
It is our monthly Mental Health Matters. Dr. Alexandra Borden, Stephen Carton, and Brent Hydes are our guests. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for calling.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Sterling.
Hey, good afternoon, man. How are you?
I'm doing good today. Doing good.
All right. Well, that's a good day to be doing good.
Mr. Brent. Good afternoon, Mr. Brent and the ladies.
Good afternoon.
And I have a few questions. First question is, what substance is it that you guys cater to? Like people that use substance abuse, what substance is it specifically?
In my job as a community psychiatric nurse and at the group home in West Bay, Loud Silent Voices, the most common use of illicit drugs is cannabis. We also see people that have a history of alcohol abuse as well, but mostly cannabis and cocaine.
Okay. Well, my biggest question on that, what is there anything with the alcohol as well? Like when it comes into, for example, you talk about halfway house, the rehab for alcohol abuse, because alcohol should be illegal, but it's legal. Is that treated the same exact way like how you do with the cocaine and the cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that Caribbean Haven specialises in both their outpatient treatment programme and their residential programme, and they would be able to accommodate individuals who have been, using alcohol heavily and may experience some withdrawal symptoms. So Caribbean Haven, the counselling centre, would be able to best address those issues for you. But yes, there is help available.
And what I can tell them that anyone that enters the halfway house program has to remain abstinent from all mind-altering chemicals, because we believe that once you start using one drug, it'll probably just lead to the next one. But in the setting that we operate, any kind of drug use is unacceptable.
And so the way that would work is that you'd start with probably Caribbean Haven with their withdrawals management unit, go through treatment there to get stable, and then you would talk to Mr. Brent afterwards. So then you would transition to the halfway house afterwards. Coming out of mental health treatment, then you might get referred to Loud Silent Voices group home.
Yeah, and again in Loud Silent.
So when Brent says mind-altering drugs, when you say mind-altering drugs, what do you consider is the mind-altering drugs? That's the thing.
I call marijuana mind-altering. I call alcohol mind-altering. I call cocaine mind-altering. I call heroin or anything that you put in your system that changes the way you operate as a human being.
So I have a bigger question on that. Why aren't all of those substances treated the same way?
I can't answer that question. All I know is Hope Foundation. Hold on, listen a second. All I know is Hope Foundation runs a strict program. If you're caught at the house under any kind of mood altering chemicals, you will be asked to leave the program. I'm not going to get into why people are treating this one different from that one. All I know is that our rules are the rules, and they're simply just that, the rules.
Well, my honest opinion is I think that needs to be revised if this is the situation, because my honest opinion is, as a human, if I decide that I've done this and it has not affected me anyway in my life, where I feel like, okay, I want to tell my story out, but I don't want to be a part of your clan.
Well, that's it. I am not going to tell you what exactly going on, how you should do, and how you should handle your situation. All I'm saying, if you're drinking and that create a problem, I would tell you to keep going, do it. But I am telling you, it's alcohol and drugs. It's a progressive disease, and if you continue to keep it up, it's only going to get worse.
So there's always a kind of, if you don't mind, always, if I could just put in an opinion as well, there's always a balance, right? So that's why, I'm a psychologist, and when people come in, we always have to look at, what is going on. Is there difficulties? Are the difficulties to the level of being what we consider clinically significant? Are they having a significant impact on your ability to function and complete daily activities, or are you being distressed by them? And so that's where some people are able to safely do things like drink without it having repercussions on their life. For some people, too much is going to be a couple of drinks. For some people, too much is going to be many, many drinks. And so that's going to vary by the individual. So what we're looking at is any substances that get in the way of your ability to complete daily activities or cause you significant distress. So that's going to look different for different people.
So, to add to what Dr. Borden said.
Before I forget what she just said, right?
Sure.
Because I have questions to ask as I get my answers.
Okay.
So when you say carefully drink, what do you mean by carefully drink?
Well, I'm going to leave you with this. If your family is suffering, if your bills are suffering, and if you're having a problem functioning healthy on a daily basis, then I'm going to leave it with you, then you may want to take a look at your behavior.
So are you trying to transfer it to me that I am being disrespectful then?
No, not at all, not at all. What I'm saying that if your household is hurting or suffering, then you personally may want to take a look at your behavior, how you can possibly do things different. I'm not saying or trying to point fingers at you. I am just suggesting that you take a look at your actions and what you're doing, and if you're functioning okay, I guess, and if you're happy with it, there's nothing I can tell you, but I can tell you to take a look at your household, take a look at your relationships with your family and your friends, and if they're probably saying there's an issue there, maybe there is something to look at.
All right, go ahead.
I will say if the concern is the distinction between drugs and alcohol, that's another change that we're trying to bring about as well, because alcohol very much is a drug and does do a lot of damage to the body and socially, and so that is a kind of an artificial distinction that's come up because the community and society is really more comfortable with alcohol than we've heard us use the term illicit drugs, but really all of them can do damage, and so that's where you know it's up to the individual and the impact it has on them in their life.
Any final thoughts before we take the other caller, sir?
I would like them to start treating the drugs equally. That's all. I would like them to start treating the drugs very equally with responsibility involved.
Okay. I think this is, thank you too, and I think this is where I know some didn't like it when I would say, instead of saying drugs and alcohol, just like Dr. Borden said, drugs, including alcohol. Let's take this other caller. Hey, welcome, thank you for listening, and thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, mate.
Good afternoon, how are you today?
Okay, good afternoon to you, Gusto.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, well, when it comes to drug addiction, most people choose to use drugs because of things that have happened to them in their past, emotional scars, bad things that have happened to them in the past, and that's why you see most people choose to use drugs. And there was a young man, I saw an interview with a young man who was a drug addict, and he said that he's glad that he chose to use drugs for one reason, because he was going to take a gun and blow his head off. And there was another man that I met too, that I grew up with, a very close friend of mine, who's doing very well in life. He's a millionaire, I know that. And he says what he chose for his scars and his wounds was work. And he became a workaholic. So it's not just people that use drugs that have addictions that they're fighting. For example, obesity. And people will have to realize that these AA meetings and these NA meetings that you see people be attending, these meetings aren't just good for people that use drugs, These meetings are also good for people who have not even used drugs in their lives, but there are certain things going on in their lives that they're able to learn and to help them with whatever they might be coping for in these meetings also. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And I think that last point of call is therapy. Having a trusted professional that you can speak to Dr. Borden is helpful. Group therapy, individual sessions, family, whatever, right?
I'm actually a huge fan of AA and NA principles as well, and I think if a lot of them were taught earlier on in school, then, or just in society, then it would actually help a lot of things that go on.
I think what Mr. Dr. Divya or Nurse Divya and on the counseling center, I think the problem a lot of us have with working with people is how do we get people to be honest? How do we get people to completely be honest about the scars that they have suffered, the pain, the neglect, the abuse, whether it was physical, emotional, sexual, whatever it might have been, is to get them to open up and actually talk about these issues. Because we got to understand that the drugs and alcohol is just a small symptom of the problems that we deal with.
It's a coping mechanism.
Right. We try to always get to the underlying. What is the underlying issue?
So let me then ask, right, with that, the caller made another excellent point. Some of us, whether it's food or whether it's our work, we bury ourselves literally into this because it doesn't seem to be too harmful. I mean, food aside. And we go to work and our colleagues and our families say, look at that person, what a strong work ethic, always providing, but is in that work constantly, and the family's bills are paid, the nest egg is being built, college fund for the children, retirement, whatever it is. And we may not look at it and go, I wonder what's there.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to the idea that everybody is fighting some battle, right? It may not be a major battle, it may not be a major war, but nobody has it easy in life, and some people unfortunately have it a lot more difficult than others, for sure. But as my sister said years ago, I don't know who writes the scripts, but it's so true because it does seem that some people go just from one struggle to another. But it's about building resilience, right? It's about building strength. And one of the great things that LSV, I think, is doing with the group home, right, and with the Mercury House that we have down in West Bay, is it's enabling people who are facing challenges, to see that there is help available, that they can become more independent, that they can feel more purposeful. And in doing that and being supported in doing that, they can almost, cut it off at the chase, right, and get to where they want to go faster. But it's all about support, and it's about care, and it's about being kind, and it's reaching out to all these resources that we have in the community. And that's what LSV does. It's two homes that can accommodate 4 male and 4 female. We currently have 4 in there, and you have to be 18 and over, and you have to have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. You need to be drug free, alcohol free as well, because of course you're living in a setting that is not just you. There's other people to consider, but people are then tuned into programs and assisted with that. We've got somebody currently in the Passport to Success, others have had jobs or going out to work, but it's just about getting people on that track.
So is it more than just about a second chance? Is it that the society need to look at integration, as you were talking earlier?
But I think that's the great thing about LSV and about the group home, and about Hope as well, is that we are in the community. We're not isolated somewhere. LSV group home is in a residential setting.
Yeah, as it should be.
Exactly, because I don't know who you live with, Dwayne. You don't know who I live with, Alexandra. I mean, none of us knows what goes on behind those 4 walls.
But we have to live with ourselves.
And that can be the greatest.
Dr. Borden?
And that's why I think if we could give the tools earlier, I think that we're looking at a lot of our time is spent looking at treatment and intervention. Prevention would ultimately be the goal, and that's where that cultural shift comes in. The Alex Panton Foundation's got several programs going in the schools on emotional literacy, something that I think Caymanians have always been very strong people, but the idea of the emotional side is something that honestly we couldn't really deal with, with the way that we grew up with fishing and how hard things were, that now is coming about more, and that the younger generations are definitely dealing with, so helping them to understand the emotions, cope better, find healthy coping, because maladaptive coping is not always substance abuse or cutting. There's a lot of other things that we can do that hurt ourselves or don't function for us. And giving them healthy coping mechanisms and healthy ways of building support. Social support's the biggest protective factor, not only for recovery, but for prevention of difficulties with substance use or mental illness.
And this is something that Brent shared, that we never know what the person, as he was saying, here we are swirling at the top of the drain, and we're treading water. A friend of mine, she would talk about this script that we have, we keep replaying our own hits. If we can change that script, and not like the talking heads and the public pundits for the political parties talking about, flip the script. If we change the script so we see ourselves with a greater sense of self-confidence and higher self-esteem, self-worth, and that self-validation, so that we look positively and productively at who we are, and think of ourselves in a way that we can contribute, that we're deserving.
And sometimes it's about facing those fears, and sometimes it's about family facing those fears, right? And, that they feel that, and maybe this goes back years ago as well, that actually they felt that they were being protective of the individual, that they were keeping hidden away from public view. And actually, they probably weren't. And some of that maybe exists this very day with all of us that were protecting someone. But actually, you're not really doing them any favours, and you're not doing ourselves any favours, right? Because you're just fostering that negativity. So, the thing about LSV as well is, apart from the group home, it also offers a family support group, and that happens on the last Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock at Elmsley Memorial Church. And we really want to welcome people, encourage people to go out there to talk freely. We talked about the value of group work, about sharing this amongst peers. If we all could admit that we are all, might necessarily be in the same boat, but we're sometimes, in on the same, stretch of water, but facing different problems, because maybe it's the equipment is difficult, or
we definitely
the
at some
crew
point in our
isn't
lives
good.
we're going to need a paddle.
Yes, exactly. So not to forget.
Yeah, we've always heard, the grass may be green on the other side.
Yeah.
But it has to be mowed.
It has to be mowed. Well, there you
It has
go.
to be mowed.
You got a chap.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I think that when I look at the Cayman context, and I keep saying, it was inspired by a comedian who said, "Yeah, we seem to put a man on the moon. Why can't we?" Well, in the Cayman context, we're a small community. There's a great resource in the professionals. Are we responsible in our actions and endeavors? Are we willing to be held accountable as we hold others accountable? If someone holds himself out to be a professional in a certain area, are we evaluating to ensure that the person is? Are we willing to revoke the licensing? Are we willing to ensure that it's satisfied, not just on paper? And until we do that, Dr. Borden.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you raise a valid concerns. That's what I was talking about, knowing what the mental health law is, what your rights are as a loved one of someone who's going through a crisis or as the person going through the crisis. That's important to know. But also to understand, things like therapy and how that works and being able to, and knowing how, what confidentiality is. It's understanding all these things that can be helpful for us and knowing where to call and who to call and how it works.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times we don't understand what therapy is and how it's different from talking to a friend. So that kind of knowledge is really powerful, and that's that's up to each of us to know if you're going to see a therapist, are they licensed? What's their license? If you're having difficulties, so I'm on CPAM, which is the licensing board for therapists. If it's a psychiatrist, it's going to be the Medical Dental Council, MDC. All regulated by the Health Practice Board and the Health Practice Commission through the government.
Yeah.
That if you have concerns, it's your right to ask the person you're working with, what is their training? Where did they go to school? What kind of license do they have? Has there ever been any problems? It's up to you if they tell you, it's up to them if they tell you how many children they have and if they're married. But their licensing and their training is something that they have to disclose and something that you have the right to ask. And I think that's really important for, especially in Cayman, we're not as litigious as the States. In the States, you demand to know those kinds of things. You demand confidentiality, but in Cayman, we're still learning about mental health and how it works and how mental health treatment works and what your rights are and what you can ask. And that if something isn't working for you, or if they do something wrong, then there is a board that holds them accountable.
And this is where we need to know. I recognize our segment is over. Brenda, I'll give you a couple of seconds for closing, and then and then Dr. Borden maybe wind us up, tell us about the resources. Sure. Right?
Well, just to add to what Dr. Borden was talking about, that's what makes these programs, these group homes, so important. Because we work with all of the professionals, the counseling center, probation, rehabilitation, the drug rehabilitation court. We're connected as a group, and we try to always facilitate amongst ourselves the best opportunity and the best program that would better assist this individual.
Indeed.
So as a team, we strive to do it right. That's not always possible, but we strive.
So one way to do it, man, do it right.
Loud Silent Voices is a non-profit organisation that started off as a family support group and then very fortunately grew into the Cayman Islands' first group home, and the group home lives and operates out of West Bay and currently has 4 individuals living there. If you would like more information, if you feel that you have a family member that would benefit from assisted living with an idea of improving their independence and getting them on a better road to living fully independent, please reach out to info@LSV support, and that's LSV SUPPORT, and you can also call 922-43847, but not to forget about the family support group that happens on the last Tuesday of every month at Elmsley Memorial at 6 o'clock. Please go along, and if you have any concerns, if you have any questions, if you feel that someone needs help and you don't know where to turn to, you don't know what to do, please go there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So if anyone does have any questions or is interested in receiving services there, you can contact both the group homes, the group home or the halfway houses. There's also the Bridge Foundation, as Mr. Brent had mentioned. If you're interested in counselling, there are free services available through the government at the counselling centre. They can be reached at 9498789. If there are ever any concerns or emergencies or you're really not sure where to go, 911 and the hospital are always a resource as well. I was actually sharing with Nurse Dimpna that, I've called several times just to be like, what do we do? Even myself as a professional get into situations that I've not been in before. So they're always very helpful for whatever's going on. We have the mental health helpline as well. 745-6463. Oh no, that's my number. 1-800-534-6463. Mine is mined as well.
Let me just plug this
and they're
in.
available during the day, and the crisis center does offer emergency support 24/7, obviously primarily focused for domestic violence, but we'll take other calls as well, and they're available at 943-2422.
All right. Yeah, let me just plug this in real quick, Brady. Saturday the 22nd is Earth Day.
Yeah.
So the Hope Foundation and our MPs from West Bay, we're all putting together a cleanup starting at West Bay Police Station at 6 p.m. Anybody get one time? Come out. AM, thank you. Yeah.
PM I could work.
Yeah. So come out and join us, and we'll have plastic bags and food and refreshments and all that good stuff.
Right.
Come out, let's have some morning chat.
Good
It's Earth Day. It's our planet.
All
We
right.
take care of planet like we take care of bodies. Come out.
Thank you both, and especially if you will allow me through you to thank Dr. Borden again. It's good to have you back in the studio. I don't know how she manages to find 50 hours in a 24-hour day, but she does. Thank you very much, Mom.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we're going to pause, take a break. When we come back, a new segment, continue partnership with HSA. So please rejoin us after the break.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Look at you, listening to the radio, tuning in, getting stuff done. Total doer. Maybe you're driving, maybe you're getting your oil changed, or grabbing some chicken. Maybe you're doing something that's nobody's business but yours. Hey, that's cool. We're all doing something. Now you can join a whole new community of doers doing more on findyellow.com. With custom search, local experts, and trusted reviews, whatever you're doing, get it done on findyellow.com.
Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and respiratory illnesses are among the top causes of death in Cayman every year. From June 3rd until July 31st, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will conduct the STEPS 2023 National Health Survey to better understand the prevalence of non-communicable diseases within our nation. Log on to www.gov.ky/steps to learn more.
Are you tired of waiting in long lines at the pharmacy just to fill a prescription?
If what, child, let me tell you.
Well, now you can save time and money with ValueMed's online prescription service. Visit ValueMed's new website, valrx.com, and click the Refill Subscriptions button. Fill in your information and choose your preferred pickup location. Or email your prescription refills for ValueMed Walkers Road at rx-wr@valrx.com, and for ValueMed in Bodentown, email rx-bt@valrx.com. Say goodbye to the hassle of waiting in lines and hello to the convenience of online prescriptions with ValueMed Pharmacy. Visit valrx.com to place your orders today.
The annual business surveys are ongoing. The surveys are conducted by the Economics and Statistics Office, ESO, and seek to measure the economic performance of all local industries. The ESO sincerely thanks those who participated in last year's survey. The survey forms were mailed or emailed to all relevant entities operating in the Cayman Islands. The surveys are confidential under the Statistics Act and are exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. Your response matters. Do your part. Fill out and return your survey forms to the Economics and Statistics Office. For assistance in filling up the forms or for more information, visit www.eso.ky or call 244-4676 or 244-4600. Better data, better decisions, better business.
This is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman. Praise time.
Give me Jesus in the morning. I will. So send me, Lord, I will go. Born again. Thank God I'm born again.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And normally, we always have that distinct pleasure of being able to continue a partnership with our Health Services Authority. And today, hey, that wonderful gifting continues. So please join us as we invite you to be a part of what we're hoping not only is informative and encouraging, but ensures that we have, timely information. So, Ms. Price, good afternoon to the both of you. As I had asked before we came on here, I want our listeners to appreciate that, we have this continued partnership. And with every segment, we have guests who accept the invitation to come in and to share with us from a learned perspective, either through the academic training or their personal experience. And as Mr. Jeff Schofield used to always share, way back then, we just didn't find him in the parking lot. This is a conscious decision. So first, through you, brief intro for our listeners. I know you don't need any, but just for formalities. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on board.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and thank you so much for having us. My name is Annie K. Price, for those who have not met me before. I've been working with HSA for 30-odd years, so I think I'm known by a lot of people. But I am a registered nurse, midwife, and public health nurse, and I work in the travel health and adult immunization clinic, as well as the child health clinic during the course of each week.
I won't embarrass the parliamentarian. That time I was there, that he was traveling, and he was, getting his, inoculation so that as he would travel. No matter whether you're 15 or, in this case, not 51, it's important that we take care of our health.
Absolutely.
And,
it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what stage you are.
And you let them
level.
feel, comforted, not
Absolutely.
just through the compassion, but the competence. And,
Absolutely.
He allowed me to watch him take his injections.
Yes.
He didn't cry much.
Yes,
We won't say that.
We won't tell his secret.
We won't tell him the secret. Well, I'm sure he's going to be. But that's life. And the reason why I highlight that is at some point we'll talk to the resource that we have there and the importance. And maybe we'll champion it irrespective of, our years of service, 4 plus decades maybe. But Nurse Wilson, good afternoon. With you, follow Nurse Anake's lead. A brief intro. Welcome, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I am Trisha Wilson, public health nurse with the HSA a little under a year. And I'm currently assigned to the Borden Town Health District where I do vaccinations. Not much travel health.
No, in time. I mean,
Childhood
1 year
vaccines
versus
is
30 years.
Yes, yes.
And the idea of childhood, vaccinations, and when we think, Nurse Anake, the notion that for some of us, we can remember as children coming along and our parents taking us because we start in school. And then here we are, however many years later, bringing our own children along. And if I'm allowed in the environment in which we live to commend you, I know when Nurse Alice James is there, similarly, the idea that you haven't aged. That's the same joyful, youthful, spirited energy is still there when we were a child, and now when we have children of our own. It just bodes well for our community that we know the people, we have the confidence in them because we see the compassion, but we also know the commitment and the competence. And that, to me, may offend some people when I say, well, when compared to wherever, we can hold our heads high, we can hold our own next to others because they bring to the table that level of professionalism that is demanded of the health sector. And I think it's just, for me, man, it makes me feel so wonderful. So I think
confident. Yes.
Yeah. There's another word I would like to use, but people would say, oh, now you're just bragging. No, but it's good because to have friends who are from other jurisdictions and to come in and say, do you realize what you have here? The investment of the country, whether through the public purse or through the private sector in health services, and to see the resource, the things that we take for granted, that in many places, what do you mean? You don't have that little screw plastic cap? Well, yeah, we have a lot. You don't have the gauze. You don't have this latest medicine, whether it's for the treatment of some of the illnesses. We have it, and we try our best to ensure that we source it.
We can truly be thankful for the resources that we have available to us, and the fact that we can make our vaccines to children free. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. That we can do that, because it means that we can actually help to keep on top of the coverages and keep the children of this country vaccinated, so that we can prevent any sort of epidemics occurring as what has happened in the past.
Well, I'm going to ask Ms. Susan maybe probably 90 seconds or 2 minutes earlier into the break, and then when we come back shortly, to not only look at the history and to look at sort of the transformation. At one point, we see our approach that vaccines were made, let's say with mercury. I remember that 1,000 years ago, to now we have better ingredients and first world options, if we could use that terminology. The idea that we can call up and we can get a resource. My joke about the parliamentarian friend, that wasn't said lightly. The fact that here is a very responsible, respected, well-resourced individual being able to go to the same facility as the rest of us, not only because it's accessible, but because he has the confidence in it. And he's treated the same way as the rest of us, or we're treated the same way as he is. And to go in there and say, well, boy, I don't like to get jumped too much. That was the word. You
That's right.
Yeah. But he gets it, and he knows that the thing that he gets allows him to travel to a far-off land to be inoculated against the thing that you need to get, and to have that with a relative ease of access.
Absolutely, yeah.
We can't downplay that. So maybe when we come back from our break, as I did say, 90 seconds earlier, well, maybe it's more than 45 seconds, we can talk more about it. We can talk about our children in the program, and your first year into the program, Nurse Wilson. We'll see where it takes us, right? All right, please join us right after the break.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Ladies and gentlemen, after a 3-year hiatus, Junior Badabanu is back.
Look where we reach again.
That's right, the streets of Georgetown will come alive on Saturday, April 22nd, when Junior Badabanu will present colorful costumes with this year's theme, a hearing drums.
Look where we reach again.
The Family Fun Day will start at 2 p.m. with food, face painting, and much more. It's going to be a whole heap of fun for the entire family. Junior Badabanu Street Parade begins at 4 p.m. on Saturday from the lawns of the Glass House. Winds through the street of Georgetown and returns to the Glass House for the big finale and awards for the best Junior Badabanu bands. Come celebrate the Juniors' unforgettable memories this Saturday at Junior Badabanu Street Parade. Sponsored by Cayman National, Saxon, Cayman Airways, Pepsi, RBC, the Department of Tourism, and Radio Cayman.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Every boy, every girl, every mom, every dad, every student, every teacher, every scholarship provider. The annual Rotary Central Bill Rudy Science Fair is back. Saturday, April 22nd at the Ark Recreation Center, Camana Bay. A universe of science, invention, innovation, experimentation, botany, medicine, robotics, engineering. So much imagination, so much science. Your children, our children. the next Nikola Tesla, the next Albert Einstein, the next Stephen Jobs, budding climate scientists, maritime scientists, engineers, biomedical engineers. Hear them talk, see them show you how. The 16th Annual Rotary Central Science Fair, Saturday, April 22nd at the Ark Recreation Center, Camana Bay. This event is free to the public. Rotary, all that you can imagine.
It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's 2-for-1 Taco Tuesdays, and it's happening all day long at Taco Restaurant and Bar, located in East End and West Bay. Who doesn't love tacos, especially when they're 2-for-1, featuring specialty tacos like peanut chicken, blackened fish, pulled pork, vegetarian and coconut shrimp, and of course all of your favorites. Enjoy 2-for-1 tacos and 2-for-1 margaritas every Tuesday at Taco Restaurant and Bar, all day long in East End and West Bay.
They say variety is the spice of life, and that's why at Subway we're introducing the new boneless hot sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks very much for this opportunity and the continued partnership with the Health Services Authority to get a chance to, talk about vaccines and Vaccination Week in America in particular. We have Nurse Annika Price together with our colleague Nurse Tricia Wilson joining us. Nurse Wilson, from that perspective, though, we see, well, I used to call it the Public Health Department. You make sure I have it termed correctly, and I think I still know where it is. I could probably find it, blindfolded, but around the corner, up the wall, just across the side. Still in the same place where what was women's health, right?
No, well, the public health department for Georgetown is located on the second floor at Smith Road Medical Complex. And of course, we do have district clinics. So we have the Modern Town Health Center, we have Northside, East End, and of course, West Bay Health Facility. All these are open and available.
And on the BRAC as well, the Fifth Hospital?
Yes, there's the BRAC also. On the bluff, there's a public health department. And the nurse goes across to Little Cayman.
We cover the entire country. So with Vaccination Week in America, we've had this discussion continually for many years now. It's not just promotion and celebration, it's about education and information. So share this as well, sir.
Okay, so Vaccination Week in the Americas this year will be celebrated between the 22nd and the 29th of April under the theme or the slogan, Get Up to Date, # Each Vaccine Counts. And of course, we know PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, along with the countries and the territories of the region of the Americas, which we do belong, this commemorates as a 21st V Vaccination Week in the America. We normally say VWA, right? It is really something magnificent. It's a time to really focus on vaccine, especially vaccine-preventable diseases such as measles, mumps, rubella, poliomyelitis, hepatitis B, diphtheria, tetanus. We're really focusing on these. Now, vaccines have come a far way across the years. We have seen elimination of at least 6 childhood diseases just because of these vaccines. We also look at, if you compare our region to others, we are doing really well with our coverages. The emphasis for Vaccination Week of the Americas campaign is to emphasize the protection that vaccines provide to the individual and their loved ones, and to stress their importance for a long and healthy life. The goal really is to create awareness about the vaccines that people of all ages need to receive. As Nurse Annika alluded to, if I travel, different countries require certain vaccines depending on the prevalence of certain diseases in their area, and it's the same for us. Vaccination week, we try to focus on mainly on the basic vaccines, the ones that are right across the board, that are right up the alley. But of course, we'll also offer vaccines to adults who might also be needing vaccines that they probably didn't get at a younger age. We must stress that successful immunization programs in the region has eliminated, as I said before, 6 vaccine-preventable diseases. Of course, we'll talk about poliomyelitis, which we must remember there was a recent outbreak in the U.S., which is really close to home. So we have to continue our effort through immunization to elude this from our environment. We're looking at measles. I mean, you haven't heard about measles in a while here, and that is, of course, primarily due to our immunization programs. The only thing we don't give measles though as a single entity, we give it as a triple vaccine. So we have a triple measles, mumps and rubella vaccine, which offers the same protection. So successful programs have resulted in increase and increase in vaccine coverages, and there's a decrease in the disease prevalence, and of course health does benefit. So hospitalization for these diseases are really, I haven't seen any. Nurse Aniki, have you had any since you have been here?
Any outbreaks?
Any outbreaks?
Not really, no.
Right.
No.
So it really works. The statistics, they do work.
I think too is perhaps the late Dr. Jackman, for instance. When I think back to his time at what would be the Department of Agriculture in terms of looking at species coming in, whether it's livestock, whether it's the plants and the like, the prevention, the inspection, the enforcement. Maybe it's part of that vigilance that we have in our community and ensure the overall safety. So, as a smaller jurisdiction, your colleague Nurse Wilson, say relative to the region, we do well, but we do well maybe because of that concerted commitment to ensure the health and well-being of the community, not just its participation in compliance, but the notion that we want health to be something that is embraced and inclusive. It's not that way for many of us in the region. And in Cayman in particular, maybe it's the Caymanians who don't realize the resource that we have. It's only when we're reminded through travel or through our colleagues who say, back here,
you have to pay for it.
Yeah, we don't have this. And we take it for granted that we do. Not in a disparaging way, it's just, it's the norm.
Well, like Dr. Jackman has, during his tenure, he's put a lot of things in place that help to protect the public. So did Nurse Josie Solomon.
Yes.
We refer to her as the mother of public health, and she actually put a lot of things in place in the early 70s when she returned from training, and she's laid the foundation for what we know today to be a good vaccination program. And she set the standards as well at that time, and we have maintained those standards and improved on whatever areas that we can improve on. And so that has gained the confidence of the general public.
That's right.
In the vaccination programs that we have.
Well, thank you very much for highlighting Nurse Josie, and I'm hoping that not just her family but the wider community would see that even though Scripture talks about a prophet is not without honor save in his own country, that we have those individuals who are the soil, who've committed not for any sort of public accolade, but because of the professionalism, the personal ethos. And they've done things to a high standard that we can build on because they've set the bar so high.
Absolutely.
And when we think that oftentimes many people look elsewhere for things that are good, we fail to respect, recognize, reward the things that are right here. And I think Nurse Josie, like Nurse Leila and many others, they were phenomenal. They had the heart of service. Sonika, you likewise.
Dwayne, her day is coming. Her day is coming.
Yes, ma'am.
I've spoken to this. Same exact thing you're saying.
Yeah.
We have to recognize her contribution.
I'm so glad. And this is where when I look at the discussion today, I think of my own experiences as a child, taking my own children. And the idea that you ask a question, you can get a very, very informed discussion from a considered perspective. You can get a sense of comfort, your mind's at ease, and then you can say, well, what about this or that? And to see the transformation, that attempt at making you comfortable helps in the delivery of the service, but helps in the uptake of it as well. But I don't know, it's just something phenomenal about the space.
I think the service that we provide is a personal one. I really do believe that people feel comfortable when they come to us, and they feel that they're getting the attention that they need, and I believe that they...
Well, I hope it continues. It is indeed.
Oh yes, absolutely. It must continue.
Well, you know what? The investment isn't just the financial; it's in the personal. It isn't just the resource of the billing. It's in the the actual things that we supply, but it's in the delivery, and maybe understanding where we come can give us a perspective on where we should go, but appreciate where we are now. And
absolutely.
There's a vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help us out. Through you, we'll learn more about the history, but we also can appreciate what is it that we should be doing. I mean, Nurse Wilson talked about the adult, for instance. And many of us don't think of the adult getting some, let's use the word injection, unless we're traveling, or God forbid we had some mishap working at home, step on a rusty nail, and there's that tetanus shot.
Right.
When was the last time I had tetanus shot? What do you mean? When was it? 1,000 years ago? Why do I need it? And then it's explained. And even though you may be 40, or think you're 40, and you're probably 40 plus an extra 40, it's still there for you to help you to be healthy.
Well, if we look at the history of vaccines, talking about the history of public health and vaccination program in the Cayman Islands, I did some research on the history of vaccines, I think a couple of years ago during the pandemic, and I discovered that, and I'd known this from previously, but I discovered that about over 200 years ago, the late 1700s,
I was just a young fellow.
Edward Jenner actually observed something that really led him to discover, to come up with this idea of vaccination. He discovered that the milkmaids who were milking the cows did not get full-blown cowpox. So the cows had this cowpox, but the milkmaids didn't get it. They got it on their hands, but it didn't make them sick and it didn't kill them. And he realized that there was a relationship between the cows having this cowpox and the ladies who were milking. So they got the disease and they got over it. And he started experimenting by taking some of the cowpox and blowing it in a straw into the nostrils of he started with a young child. And everybody thought he was totally crazy. And he then discovered that the child would get the cowpox. He would get the pox, but it was not full blown. It was reduced because he only used a few flakes. And from that, he went on to discover vaccines. He actually published his findings, but everyone in the UK thought he was crazy. They thought he was mad. And then someone in a foreign country came across his publication, and they actually decided they were going to do what he was doing. And then they started writing up what their results were, and they combined with his efforts to actually founded then the vaccination of these diseases. So that history was very important, because during the smallpox epidemic of I think it was during the reign of Queen Mary II, she actually got smallpox and she died, and France's King Louis XV also died from smallpox. And during that time, there were like 200,000 troops who got infected, of which 25,000 died. Nowadays, smallpox has been eradicated from the face of the earth because of vaccinations. So if we look at where we've come from, I remember having a list of all the number of diseases that were seen on an annual basis, and diphtheria was one, 300,000 in 1 year, and many of the children died from it. So if we look at the past and we look at what we've accomplished, then we can't hold back. We have to move forward with vaccinations.
All right, well, let's take our news break, and maybe through you we can understand a bit more, talk about some of the schedules, and who knows what we'll learn if we listen. All right, please pay attention to our news, get informed, and join us after.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Brought to you by Tropical Plaza on Smith Road.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Now in its second year, the Cayman Connection Making Waves Awards will recognize Caymanians studying, working, and living abroad who have made outstanding contributions to and excelled in their respective fields at a regional or global level. The nomination period is now open and will close on May 31st. Visit caymanconnection.org or email makingwaves@caymanconnection.org for more information. In international news, 11 Indonesian fishermen have been rescued after surviving for 6 days without food or water on a tiny island off Australia's coast. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority said they were airlifted to safety on Monday, but 9 others are feared dead. The survivors said their 2 boats were hit by the powerful tropical cyclone Ilsa last week, sinking 1 boat. The skeleton of a 67-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus rex has been sold to a private individual for $6.2 million. This is the first time a T-Rex has been auctioned in Europe. The specimen has been described as one of the most spectacular T-Rex skeletons in existence, measuring 11.6 meters long and 3.9 meters tall. Scientists are concerned about the increasing number of dinosaur fossils ending up in private collections. Due to their rarity and their scientific value, they are important for education and public engagement, but their disappearing into the vaults of private collectors means that they are not available for public display. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Brought to you by Tropical Plaza on Smith Road. Yo, they just don't make things like they used to. I could throw my old Nokia into a brick wall and it would bounce back ringing. Today, seems like electronics are made to break, not work. When the gadgets go down, and they will, check out all about electronics in Tropical Plaza, Smith Road, the modern-day Inspector Gadget. Quality, professional repair service. All about electronics in Tropical Plaza, Smith Road. Specializing in repair, service, and installation of all electronics. All about electronics in Tropical Plaza, Smith Road.
Between the traffic, the meetings, kids' activities, there just isn't enough time. Best Health Pharmacy was a game changer. Not only are they centrally located on Eastern Avenue, but they deliver prescriptions for free anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. I could not believe it. When my prescription ran out, they ran it back to me. Best Health Pharmacy, located at Crown Square Plaza on Eastern Avenue, across from Edie's Decor, offering free prescription delivery anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. Call 949-1301 or WhatsApp your prescription to 924-5358. Best Health Pharmacy. Your health, your convenience is their priority.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. And if you do have a question, a comment, you want some clarification, you just want to contribute to our conversation, the phone lines are there. If she would love me to term as the wonderful Miss Susan is going to not only answer the phone but facilitate our production here. So 949-8037, 949-6990, toll free at 1-800-534-8255. Nurse Anna K. Price, our colleague, Nurse Tricia was, midwife, public health nurse, right? And the idea of midwifery, or is it biffery?
Midwifery.
Biffery? Wafery?
Midwifery?
Depending how you say it. Tomato. No, for those of us who are somewhat familiar with that process and the birthing of a child, the safety of the mother in particular and that child, that translates into the practice perhaps in this part relative to others. It's been still miraculous. And then that young child being able to, through stage inoculations, being able to be safely nurtured. Wow, to grow into the next Nobel laureate to be.
This is all allowed because of vaccinations.
Yeah.
Because in the old days, children got communicable diseases for which we're vaccinating them against. And sometimes in families, they were used to losing 2 or 3, 4 children. I know my great-grandmother in East End, she lost 3 children before birth and 3 children after birth. And they were used to that in those days because of the fact that they didn't have the vaccinations, they didn't have the standard of hygiene, that we come to take for granted these days. Yeah.
And to understand just a little bit about the midwife and the way we'll celebrate the physician, and I think that's excellent, the training, but either knowing firsthand or having oral history or deliberate conscious of reading the documented word, you see how that has assisted, no matter how it's portrayed on this little screen, that not just the comfort but the safety of the birthing process. But I want to ask you, in saying safety, that in today's world, relative to vaccinations, I think I'm correct in saying that there was the use of certain ingredients. Mercury, for instance, long ago in vaccines, and we understood, hey, there's a better alternative, let's change that to something else. I share that because someone just recently said that in the region, relative to Cayman, when we moved to, his words, first world sort of medications, there were still other jurisdictions that had, somewhat safe, but not up to the world standard when we were having it long before. Not unlike, our wonderful women who championed for their right to vote long before many other places. That visionary, forward-thinking, courageous approach, the demand for a healthier, more inclusive society has always been there. Yes. So the safety, is that something that we should be taking for granted? Should we be reminded?
Well, immunizations are highly effective methods of preventing certain infectious diseases. We know that. For the individual and for society, in terms of public health, prevention is always better than a cure, more cost-effective than a cure. Vaccines are generally safe and adverse reactions are uncommon. Routine immunization programs protect most of the world's children from a number of infectious diseases that previously claimed millions of lives over the years. Now, I must say to you that in the early days, yes, maybe there were some ingredients in the vaccines that cause problems, but the research is ongoing and changes have been made. Thimerosal predominantly has been removed from children's vaccines, and we have seen a higher quality of vaccines being produced under very high standards. And that vaccine is handled in a very specific way from the moment it's manufactured until the moment that we administer that vaccine. There's a whole stream of protocols that everybody has to follow to make sure that vaccine is safe. And so today we have a much better quality vaccine, especially the DPT, which used to cause quite a lot of fever post-vaccination. But nowadays, hardly any children will have a fever, and if they do, it's mild, or it might be short-lasting. So yes, we know the vaccines today are much safer than they ever have been. So we continue to promote the vaccination of our children because of that safety. And we feel confident ourselves when we administer those vaccines that the child is going to leave the office and go home and be perfectly healthy and perfectly normal.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, everybody wants to consciously know that we're doing the very best for our children.
Absolutely. We tell the parents that the child may suffer from a little sleepiness in the evening, or they may get tiredness, they may get a bit cranky for a short time, or the child might get a mild fever or a high fever. If on the rare occasion the child gets a high fever, we advise them to give the Calpol, Tylenol, whatever they have, Panadol, for fever and pain.
Right.
Yes.
So with that, maybe 2 things, if I could ask, just for clarity to ensure that I'm not misinformed. The vaccination schedule, how soon does it start? How does it run? Let's start with that first.
Okay, so here in the Cayman Islands, the schedule begins at birth with hepatitis B. First dose of hepatitis B is offered at birth, and it goes through primary series, ends at 4 years old. So we have at birth first hepatitis B. At 6 weeks, that's a postnatal visit. We'll give a second hepatitis B. We'll also offer the BCG vaccine, and as well as the first dose of rotavirus. Rotavirus is an oral vaccine. Then the child will come back at around 2 months old, which is a short interval, but that's the next schedule. And here the child will be introduced to the Pentaxim. Now, the Pentaxim is somewhat of a 5-in-1, so it does protect against diphtheria, polio, tetanus, that's DPT, as well as influenza type B, and we also offer pneumococcal vaccine. That's 2 injectables. The child will return at 4 months old and at 6 months old for the same vaccines that were just listed. Then the child comes back at 9 months where we get the third and final hepatitis B vaccine.
With respect to vaccinations and laws and mandatory, we're talking at birth with Hep B, as you were referencing, a few months into the child's early life. Are these vaccinations mandatory to have at that time?
But here in the Cayman Islands, there is no policy or law that stipulates a mandatory status for these vaccines. However, it is a consensus that is raised with the parents, so they are advised, they are informed about the vaccines and the reason for the vaccines, and so the parents are the ones who actually make the decision to give the vaccines and which to give.
Okay, so two questions then. One, can the parents say, okay, I don't want it right now at birth, but let me shift the schedule a little bit down the road to the child is
we do have some parents who do ask for that. However, we still go ahead and do the educational session to determine, to state exactly why the vaccine is given at that age, which can be delayed, and the reason why. But yes, the parent do have that choice.
And in the sense of, so that we understand. So I think being informed and knowledgeable is helpful in many ways, because we may label under something that we thought was and it isn't. In this process, our parents or the guardian or the responsible person say, listen, this is not mandatory, or this is it, or is it just administered and we don't know at that time as the adult?
No, from birth, I know that even at the hospital, I know that the parents are informed and they made that decision whether or not. They are also informed at the pediatric visit by the pediatrician who says, hey, these vaccines are offered publicly or privately, and this is what it does, this is when it's recommended, but it's really your choice. It's the same thing at the facilities. Mark, your parents will only come if they need the vaccine, and which vaccine. There's a few parents will say, okay, we're holding on this one, we'd rather this one. Some will say, okay, I know the child is due 2 injectables, let's go with one and delay one. The vaccine schedule in itself, it lends for some amount of that. However, education, as you pointed to, is very important. We have to stress, say, hey, remember, these are childhood vaccines, and the efficacy and effectiveness is more, will be seen in this age group, right? But of course, the onus is on the parent or guardian.
And then, as we hear the public service announcements, the child enters school.
Yes, there are some institutions who mandate, and because of the understanding that some of these diseases do cause outbreaks, and then an outbreak is a bigger, you're looking at financial concerns, whether lawsuits and all of that.
So make sure I didn't misunderstand. You said there's some institutions that mandate it, but even though the law doesn't.
Yes, there are some would say, hey, in order to get into my institution, this is what I need. And therefore, even universities and college overseas, they tell you, hey, in order for acceptance here, you need these vaccines. And therefore you will see.
But that's overseas and
overseas things. Mainly.
But if in our country, then if an institution mandates something but the law doesn't, how does that resolve itself?
That's the legal part. How would that resolve itself?
You just
that would have
to a thought process.
Yes, that really would be something.
Okay, but again, it comes back to understanding where we are and why we're doing it, and having that public education helps us to make informed decisions relative to what it is that we're hopefully doing with the intent of doing the best thing and the like. All right, we got the final break. So quickly, time flies. We having fun. All right. When we come back, maybe you can share some closing thoughts with us, and keep us posted. That'll be fine. All right, join us right after the break.
Thank you.
When you're craving something big, something tasty that gives you that lip-smacking satisfaction, something that hits the spot, there is nothing better than a footlong from Subway.
It's pretty tasty.
Filling and full of flavor. Try our new sweet onion steak teriyaki with a twist, or the classic chicken teriyaki. Top it with green pepper, onions, cheese, and that sweet onion teriyaki sauce, all piled on your favorite artisanal bread. Satisfy that craving with a footlong from Subway.
Fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty.
Let's make it a meal with a drink, chips, and cookies. There is nothing better than a footlong from Subway.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza, open Monday to Friday 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ro Variety, centrally located in Tropical Plaza on Smith Road, carrying a wide range of household items, bathroom accessories, towels, clocks, handbags, clothes, shoes, jewelry, and more, and more, and more. You can buy from the big box retailers or support local. The better deals come from shopping local. Ro Variety Store, Tropical Plaza, Smith Road. Telephone 924-9553.
Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And from the Health Services Authority, Nurse Annika Price, together with her colleague Nurse Tricia Wilson, joins us. And as we talk about vaccines and Vaccination Week in America, I guess the more we speak to something, the more we may learn, the more we're willing to ask questions and seek answers, the more we may be informed. And I think started out initially as talking about those of us who travel, and we may go to some exotic place that may require something or have advised that we do it. I don't believe so much, I appreciate the resource that we have here. So through you, maybe we could ask about that international traveler and maybe what is required, and if it is it available here?
Well, every Thursday, for the entire day, as a matter of fact, we have an international and adult immunization clinic. I'll speak to the adult immunization clinic in a little bit. But first of all, I'll speak to the international vaccination. There are many, many people who travel all over the world from the Cayman Islands for many, many different reasons. And surprisingly, sometimes I'm very surprised what people are leaving the island for. And they come to us and they have a pre-travel consultation. And during this pre-travel consultation, we have to establish where they're going and how long they're going for, when they're leaving, when they're returning, and what their travel plans are, what type of activities they're going to be engaging in, and what their accommodation is going to be, and what area they're leaving is going to, because sometimes their activities can put them at risk, sometimes the type of accommodation. There are some students who will go to 2-star houses that are housing that is equal to a 2-star hotel, and maybe the accommodation it might call for them to have typhoid vaccines. So we look at the type of accommodation, we look at the travel plans for their activities, where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing, and how long they're going to be there. And then we can determine what their risk factors are. We also look at the country that they're visiting to look to see what the risk factors are there. Are they having any current outbreaks? Do they have any endemic diseases that we need to vaccinate against? And I'll give you an example. Yellow fever is one of those. You know, there's parts of Africa, not South Africa, not anymore. And parts of Southern Africa are now free, totally free of yellow fever. But there are still parts in Central Africa that are have yellow fever. The yellow fever mosquito is transmitting yellow fever. So those persons need to have the yellow fever vaccine. If they're over the age of 60, they need to get the certificate of exemption, because the yellow fever vaccine carries a risk for persons over the age of 60. And so we always have a yellow fever certification of exemption so that they can travel with that. And also parts of South America. You will need the yellow fever vaccine for. Now, persons who are going mountain climbing, river rafting, trekking, camping, and, on the wild side, they're going to need some other vaccines as well, in addition to if they're going to places with yellow fever. In addition, they would need things like typhoid vaccine, because of the way it's transmitted. And they may also need things like the tetanus. Their tetanus updated, and definitely hepatitis A. Most of these Central, South American countries, African, Asian countries, and Europe, we advise the hepatitis A vaccine for. It's not that people often get hepatitis A, it's just that it's quite debilitating for the few people who do get it. But it's better to err on the side of caution and be vaccinated. So there's also hepatitis A, and sometimes it's required that the person gets a polio booster. If there's been any outbreaks recently in the country they're traveling to, they'll be advised to get the polio booster, and to make sure their measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines are up to date. So, go on, yes.
Yes, well, I think, as you said, two things come to mind. And we who may want to travel, the adventurous part of us, we have time on our hands, and we finally want to do those things that we dreamed about as a teenager and in college days, and maybe a young adult. So it would be good then to come have a consultation with the public health department. Okay, this is what I'm thinking about, and you can help to guide them. They've talked to their travel concierge about their plans. Now they need to talk about their safety.
Yes, and malaria also,
malaria
prophylaxis, and also to know what type of mosquito repellents to use. Everybody thinks that they can just go out and buy a mosquito repellent, but the one that really protects the population from getting like chikungunya, dengue fever, and Zika, and Japanese encephalitis is a mosquito repellent that contains 30 to 50% DEET. Because it lasts for 12 hours. It lasts many, many hours. Whereas if you get something that's very low in DEET, then every 3 hours you have to be applying it. So those sort of countries where you're going to, you need to be aware that there's a risk and get the malaria prophylaxis. And I also email them my travel tips, which helps to advise them about the food and water hygiene and the bite prevention precaution. And
I can see your book coming out soon now, But in saying that, though, there's another thing that came to mind. We think of the vaccination schedule, as Nurse Wilson shared, for the child. But even as the adult, do we need, for our own safety, not only if we're traveling, but just generally, to make sure that we're up to date?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do have a long list of vaccines offered to adults, but there are the more common ones, which I'm going to mention shortly. But the list would include the influenza vaccine, which is, is available island-wide, Monday to Friday, between 2 and 4 each afternoon at the general practice, as well as the district health centres.
Is that the same thing that we hear? Flu shot? Is that the
flu
same
shot,
thing? Okay.
Same thing.
I just want to make sure.
Yes.
All right.
And then we have, to the younger generation, we offer the HPV vaccine, the Gardasil 4. That has been predominantly offered to girls, but there are some boys who've had it as well, and on request from the parents, and that is from ages 9 to 26. There is, in fact, a Gardasil 9 available in the private sector. We don't have that as yet, but The vaccine that we have, the Gardasil 4, covers the most common strains of human papillomavirus, and the Gardasil 9 covers 5 additional strains, which are quite rare to find nowadays. But in 40 years' time, they're not going to be so rare. But we are working on that. We will be discussing that at a future date. We also have the chickenpox vaccine for those born in 1980 or later. Persons born before 1980, we would be offering them the shingles vaccine. The shingles vaccine can be taken by persons who've had chickenpox or who don't know what their status is and were born before 1980. And that's a very important vaccine. And it consists of two visits, 2 months apart. And that's important because shingles is debilitating. It attacks your nerves, affects the nervous system, and it can leave you with nerve damage, and it is very painful. And some people have complained that they've had shingles for 2 years. It can go on for quite a long time in different people. So getting that shingles vaccine is very important. We have given a lot of local people now the shingles vaccine. We started it about 4 or 5 years ago. We also have the pneumonia vaccine, which is also important for persons who have a pre-existing disease condition. They can consult with their doctor and he can refer them over. And also for persons, anyone who's over the age of 65 can come and get both of the pneumococcal vaccines, which will help protect them from getting pneumonia over the age of 65. And the PCV13 is the first one we give, and a year later we'll give the Pneumovax to a PPSV23, given 1 year later, and that protects them for at least a good 5 years. And after that, their doctor will let them know if they need to come back and get that vaccine again. So we have quite a lot of vaccines that we can offer to the to the public. We have the hepatitis A and B. B for those who have not had it in the past, A for those who are planning to travel. And there's 2 more vaccines I'd like to mention, and that is to the children who are traveling overseas to attend universities. Very important that those children get vaccinated with the MENVO or the meningitis ACWY and with the meningococcal B. MEN-B is another meningitis vaccine that the students need to get. So the parents are advised to call well in advance. Please don't wait until the child is leaving the island a couple of days beforehand. We're asking people to call in well in advance and get their vaccinations before they travel, especially our students, because we have to make sure they've had their second chickenpox. We have to make sure they got their Tdap, tetanus, diphtheria, and whooping cough at the age of 14 when they should have gotten it. Some of them, they'll hide the consent form. And then we also make sure that they've had their meningitis vaccines, both of them, before they leave for university.
And this is where I think having that level of public education and being able to be knowledgeable about what it is, access through public health, the new facility at Smith Road, I think, as convenient and accessible as that one was, this one is just as well. Yes. And as you were sharing about the travel, we have many colleagues who, are from what may be termed, developed nations, have shared through Cayman's resource. They've been able to access these vaccinations that allow them to travel much more quickly, perhaps to much more exotic regions than they would in their own home countries because of the delay, the timing, and the like. It's it's a continued discussion, but it's something I think we need to champion.
Yes. Well, we recently gave for the first time the Japanese encephalitis vaccine to a person who will be spending a few months in Japan. And that was our first time we'd given that. And it was good too that the person who was traveling thought to get it, because he's going to be in the areas that he's going to put him at risk, like the marshlands and the rice paddy fields and places like that. So it's good for people to do their own research as well and know what it is that they need to get.
But it's good that, despite the disparaging things that we may say about our country or we may allow to be say, we have that resource here that we only expect to find in, some of the G7 nations. Yeah, this little speck on the map.
Right. But the Japanese encephalitis is the one in our we don't have that as part of our program offered. We don't offer it normally. We had to specially bring that in for him. So it's just something that we can do for persons individually who need to get it. Yeah.
More than likely, with so much, I call it the concierge service, these are not things that would be as accessible in many places. So
it's very true.
Yeah, it makes me proud, and it makes me be more sort of courageous when I say that the pillars in our society are our health sector and our education sector. If it's seen as a political statement, you know what? It's not intended. It's just the God's honest truth, right? And to have professionals like the two of you so able to represent HSA to the private sector entities, your cohorts and colleagues, it just gives us added confidence in what we have. And maybe as parents, we'll encourage our children to look more at the health sciences, whether they become technicians, radiologists, whether they become specialists in neurology, who knows, right? They just need to pursue that because it is service to humankind.
But we're happy to be there providing the service.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, very happy.
Any closing thoughts, Nurse Wilson? And then
yes.
Nurse Anaki.
I wanted to zero in on the vaccination week in the Americas activities. So we are really looking at 2 mass vaccination sessions. The first we are looking at is on Saturday 22nd, and that one will be scheduled for Jonathan Graham. John
Mary
Gray.
Miller.
I'm so sorry, I'm back in Jamaica. John Gray High School. And of course, we're looking at the second around the 6th. It's the week after, the 6th of May at Mary Miller Hall. And so we're focusing on all the districts.
So 2 weeks later.
Yes, yeah. all the districts in on the island. I know that our sister island will be carrying out other activities also. We're going to be having a lot of prizes and surprises. Please come on out. Get vaccinated. I mean, no matter the age, just check your status. The children who have been behind or, for whatever reasons have been out, just take them along and we'll get them on track, on par. All right? So listening out on the media for other activities. But these are all 2 main focus points at this time. Remember the slogan, get up to date, each vaccine counts.
Thank you so much, Dwayne, for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here once again and informing the public of the vaccination week and the vaccines that are available, and so that we're asking them to do their part in making sure that their children are up to date with their vaccines. And if they're not up to date with their vaccines, they can call us on 244-2648, the Public Health Department. Please call and we'll make an appointment for you. We have special vaccination days that we do on the weekend sometimes to help catch up. So please call and we'll get your name on a list for your child to be vaccinated. And we can also be checking their schedules to make sure that they're all up to date. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thanks both you, and thanks so much for coming in. And I invite our listeners to join Mr. Art in the morning for the record. Come back for a talk today. It's Wednesday already tomorrow. Can you believe it? Wow. Well, good things happen. We have a wonderful discussion in store tomorrow relative to, to the weather and the lake. Well, be a part of that tomorrow, but start your day off right with Mr. Art for the record. Until then, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman